The 2024 New York Mets are a postseason team. It hasn't occurred terribly often in Mets history that a team unexpected to make the playoffs actually does. As we've explored, the opposite is far, far more common, and that there have been plenty of Mets teams expected to make the playoffs that ultimately, well, didn't. But that doesn't mean it hasn't happened at all. The 1969 Miracle Mets, for example, won the World Series after coming off of 7 straight losing seasons. And these weren't just any old losing seasons of 80 and 82 ball. I mean, these were truly miserable, hopeless years. But they put it all together one year and soared to heights no one thought possible at the time. In more recent years, even the 2015 Mets went way further than expectations. They ended up losing the World Series in a pretty frustrating fashion, but at the All-Star break that year, no one expected the Mets to even win the NL East. Then they traded for Yoenis Cespedes, whose incredible second half that year carried them into the playoffs. And then longtime Mets second baseman Daniel Murphy went absolutely nuclear once they got there. The 2024 Mets are the 11th Mets team ever to make the postseason. Before them, they've played in 2 wildcards, played in 4 divisional series, played in 8 league championship series, and played in 5 World Series. Welcome to the final episode of Misery. We are going to follow the 2024 Mets playoff run while simultaneously discussing the history of the New York Mets in the postseason. The 2024 Mets are a wildcard team. As we've established, the wildcard came into fruition in 1995, with 1 wildcard team per league, aka the winningest team that didn't win their division. In 2012, a second wildcard team was added, as well as a single-game elimination round between the 2 wildcard teams in each league before the division series. In 2020, in light of the COVID-shortened year, MLB expanded the playoffs to 8 teams total and created a best-of-3 wildcard series. That was disbanded in 2021, but then in 2022, a 3rd wildcard spot was added, and the best-of-3 wildcard series returned. The last time the Mets were in the playoffs was in the wildcard round in 2022. The first year, not including 2020, of the new playoff structure. They faced the San Diego Padres and lost in 3 games. The Mets were already a disappointment going into that series. We discussed this in the first episode. They were at one point first in the division and 10.5 games ahead of the Atlanta Braves, and they didn't even really collapse, per se, in terms of their record. They actually played well down the stretch. But the Braves just kept winning. They couldn't lose, and they soon caught up to the Mets. A final 3-game series against the Braves, in which the Mets were swept and thus also lost the season series, nailed the coffin shut on the Mets' division hopes. The Braves won the division, and the Mets were relegated to the wild card. October 7th. The Mets had home field advantage, which means the entirety of the wild card series would be played at Citi Field. They started Max Scherzer against the Padres' ace Yu Darvish. Scherzer, at many points in 2022, looked like the Mets' best pitcher, despite being in a rotation with Jacob deGrom. Still, like deGrom, he also shit the bed when it mattered most at the end of the season in that last series against the Braves. And well, he shit the bed again tonight. In just 4.2 innings of work, Max Scherzer gave up a whopping 7 runs to the Padres. The Mets could barely manage 1 run off Yu Darvish, an Eduardo Escobar solo shot in the 5th. Mets lose 7-1. The Mets flipped the script in Game 2. They started deGrom against the Padres' Blake Snell. Lindor got the scoring started early with a solo shot in the 1st. Then deGrom gave one up in the 3rd. The game went back and forth. An RBI single for Nimmo, then an RBI single for Jurickson Profar, and then a solo shot for Pete Alonso put the Mets up 3-2 in the 5th. The Mets were able to break things open in the 7th, though. They tagged Padres relievers Adrian Morejon and Pierce Johnson for 4 runs. The Padres got 1 run back in the 9th against Adam Ottavino, but Seth Lugo was able to convert the final out and secure the Mets' win. Game 3, though, is where things got really embarrassing. The Mets started Chris Bassett against Joe Musgrove. Before I get further into this, I have to provide a little bit of context. In 2021, MLB began cracking down hard on what's colloquially known as sticky stuff. Before 2021, pitchers often used foreign substances to get a stickier, tackier grip on the ball. which improved spin rates on their pitches. Pine tar was often illegally used for this purpose throughout baseball history, as well as mixtures of rosin and sunscreen. But the most infamous substance used in the years leading up to 2021 was known as spider tack, a sticky substance developed for weightlifters to get a better grip on heavier weights. Spider tack was way more effective than pine tar or rosin. It got to a point where in 2021, offensive numbers all across Major League Baseball were way down. The league-wide batting average was the lowest since 1968. Teams were striking out nearly 9 times per game, the most in Major League history. And by the end of June, there had already been 6 no-hitters. Throughout the season, several position players complained about the use of spider tack, and on June 5th, Twins third baseman Josh Donaldson publicly called out Yankees ace pitcher Garrett Cole for using the substance. On June 15th, MLB announced that they would start checking pitchers' gloves and uniforms after every half inning for illegal substances, with the penalty being a 10-game suspension. It was not received well by the pitchers at first, but that's where we are today. Anyway, back to the wild card. October 10th, Game 3, Citi Field. By the time we get to the 6th inning, the Mets are already down 4-0. Bassett hasn't been pitching well. Musgrove has allowed only 1 hit. But in the bottom of the 6th, Buck Showalter asks the umpires to check Joe Musgrove for sticky stuff. He claims that Musgrove's ear is suspiciously shiny, which is shown on the broadcast and the in-stadium jumbotron. In a certainly bizarre show, the umpires thoroughly check Joe Musgrove's ears on live television. They find nothing but sweat. That's not good enough for the Citi Field crowd, who boo and chant cheater at Musgrove as he mops up the Mets for 2 more innings. Musgrove glares and makes a gesture towards the Mets dugout, a la Kenny Powers from Eastbound and Down. The Mets are shut out 6-0. In the post-game presser, Musgrove called the move desperate, and Padres manager Bob Melvin said he didn't like that Musgrove's character was questioned. Buck Showalter later said he felt bad about it. Many Mets fans still hold on to the idea that Musgrove was cheating. Many Padres fans ridicule him for it. I think the whole fiasco was embarrassing, and if there truly was anything other than sweat on his ears, the umpires would have found it. The only other time the Mets played in the wild card round was in 2016, when it was still a single elimination game. It was also the last time the Mets were in the playoffs before 2022. The 2016 season was mildly disappointing to Mets fans. After making it all the way to the World Series the year before, locking up 2015 savior Yoenis Cespedes for 3 years, and with the development of their young pitching staff, many saw the Mets' future as among the brightest in baseball. But they trailed the Harper, Scherzer, Strasburg-led Washington Nationals all year and settled for the wild card, very clearly a step back from the year before. In this wildcard game, they played the San Francisco Giants at Citi Field. The game is a classic pitching duel. Noah Syndergaard versus Giants ace Madison Bumgarner. Syndergaard didn't allow a hit until the 6th inning when he gave one up to Denard Span. The next batter is first baseman Brandon Belt.
2-2.
He hammers one to deep center field. Mets center fielder Curtis Granderson is tracking it, and tracking it. It looks like it might go over his head. This game might be 2-0. This ball is
Going back, made the catch! He made the catch as he crashes into the wall!
After that catch, it looked like just maybe fate was on the Mets' side. But I'm going to teach you something. If you have to choose between fate or Madison Bumgarner in the postseason, you choose Madison Bumgarner in the postseason. Syndergaard goes 7 shutty, but is replaced by Addison Reed in the 8th, who keeps things scoreless. Bumgarner is still pitching and does the same. 9th inning now. Mets closer Jeurys Familia is up. In 2016, Jeurys Familia was one of, if not the, best closer in all of baseball. He had a league-leading 51 saves, a Mets club record, and had a 2.55 ERA. He was an all-star and even received some MVP votes. Familia gives up a double to Giants shortstop Brandon Crawford. He strikes out former Met Angel Pagan. He walks second baseman Joe Panic. Third baseman Connor Gillespie is up. Fastball, strike looking. Fastball, ball outside. Fastball, middle.
And a fly ball well hit right field. Bruce is back, turns, and it's gone! Connor Gillespie with a 3-run homer in the top of the ninth to give the Giants the lead.
Bumgarner comes back out for the ninth. 3 up, 3 down. Giants win. On the 7-train subway ride home from this game, the Strokes frontman Julian Casablancas, a lifelong Mets fan, writes the hit song Ode to the Mets. He comes up with the title as a joke, planning to eventually change it simply to Ode, but Strokes drummer Fabrizio Moretti convinces him to keep it. He says that both the Mets and the song evoke something that you set your heart to and that you love unconditionally, but that continues to disappoint you. Many fans speculate the song to really be about Casablanca's relationship with his father. If you're not familiar with the song, I recommend you pause the video here and go listen to it. So that's the Mets' history with the wildcard round. We can only hope that this year, in 2024, it goes better for them. Speaking of which, who are they playing? The Mets lost the season series to the Braves, so they've dropped down to the 3rd wildcard spot. The Padres and Braves will play each other, and the Mets will play the losingest team of the 3 division winners. That team is the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers have had our number all year, and now we're in Milwaukee. The Mets have to win 2 out of 3 in Milwaukee to advance to the NLDS. If you ask me, and most other Mets fans, at this point, the season is already a success. It's house money. This Mets team has already gone way further than anybody expected them to. But god damn it, it'd be really nice to see how far this thing can go. Game 1, Luis Severino versus Freddie Peralta. Peralta gets off to a hot start in the first. He strikes out both Lindor and Iglesias looking, and gets Nimmo to pop up weakly back to the mound, where he makes the play himself. I wish I could say the same for Severino, but the Mets get into early trouble here. After a 6-pitch at-bat, Sevy gives up a leadoff double to Bryce Terang. A first-pitch swinging Jackson Chourio moves him to 3rd on a single, and then a first-pitch swinging William Contreras brings Terang home. Runners on the corners, no outs. Sevy gets Garrett Mitchell, but then walks Willy Adames to load the bases. Luckily, Jake Bauers fouls out on the first pitch he sees for the 2nd out. But now, perennial Mets villain Rhys Hoskins is up with the bases loaded. You might remember the last time the Mets saw Hoskins with the bases loaded. It was, naturally, a grand slam, of course, that time off Sean Manaea. I think every Mets fan watching felt disaster approaching in this at-bat. And well, it wasn't a grand slam, but somehow, something that felt even more embarrassing. On the 2nd pitch of the at-bat, Severino plunks him. 97-mile-an-hour sinker in on the hands. In comes Chourio. 2-0. Thankfully, Sevy limits the damage and retires Frelick for the 3rd out. But the Mets need to answer back. In the top of the 2nd inning, the Mets break through against Peralta. Mark Vientos gets a leadoff single, Alonso walks, and then Jesse Winker triples down the right field line to bring them both home. Winker is fired up. He jaws at Willy Adames as he rounds 2nd, and the two go back and forth as he sets him to 3rd. Adames tells him he's gonna wait for him in the parking lot, which apparently he actually did. Jesse Winker used to play for the Milwaukee Brewers. It was, by far, the worst year of his career. Due to various injuries, he only played about 60 games, and he hit .199. He's mentioned in interviews that he played through chronic pain pretty much the entire year. Winker's also been criticized for being an unlikable teammate and having little work ethic. Those criticisms came from when he was with the Mariners, but I'm sure his play in Milwaukee also led to some ruffled feathers in the clubhouse. So he's playing here with a chip on his shoulder. Marte is up next, and he scores Winker on a sac fly. The Mets have taken a 3-2 lead. Tyrone Taylor and Francisco Alvarez are retired to end the inning. The game goes quietly the next inning and a half until the bottom of the fourth, when the Brewers are able to respond. Leadoff double for Sal Frelick, infield single for Bryce Terang, and then a Jackson Chourio single brings Frelick home, and a throwing error allows Terang safely into third. An RBI groundout from Contreras gives the Brewers the lead before Sevy is able to retire Garrett Mitchell for the third out. 4-3 Brewers. The top of the fifth inning for the Mets started with a fly out to left from Marte. Tyrone Taylor worked a 6-pitch at-bat for a double, but that was followed with another fly out to left from Alvarez. So there's a man in scoring position, but already 2 outs. It would be incredibly easy to let this inning slip away. But Francisco Lindor is at the plate, and he walks on 5 pitches. Jose Iglesias then hits an infield single that scores Tyrone Taylor. Tie game. That ends Freddie Peralta's day, and the Brewers bring in Aaron Ashby. Nimmo reaches on another infield single to load the bases for Mark Vientos, who smacks a first-pitch sinker for a base hit to score both Iglesias and Lindor. Nimmo goes first to third. Wild pitch, Vientos reaches second. The Brewers decide to put Pete on first intentionally. The Mets pinch hit Martinez for Winker against the lefty. He gets another base hit to score Nimmo and Vientos, capping off the inning at 5 runs. All scored with 2 outs. The Mets now lead 8-4. For the entire rest of the game, every pitcher on both teams retired the side in order, except for Savali in the 7th, who walks Pete Alonso before getting Martinez for the third out. The Mets hold on to their 4-run lead and take Game 1 in Milwaukee. Game 2, Sean Manaea versus Frankie Montas. The Mets jump on Montas early and score the first run of the game on a Nimmo single to bring home Jose Iglesias. In the bottom of the first, the Brewers answer back with a Jackson Chourio homer to tie the game up. The Mets scratch across 2 more runs in the top of the second on an Alvarez single and a Lindor sac fly to take a 3-1 lead. The game goes scoreless for the next 3 innings, until the Brewers hit a sac fly to score Terang in the 5th. It's 3-2 Mets all the way to the bottom of the 8th, when Phil Maton gives up Jackson Chourio's second home run of the night. He then gives up a 2-run shot to Garrett Mitchell. Brewers hold on to their 5-3 lead and win Game 2. Game 3, Jose Quintana versus Tobias Myers. What are we looking for in this game? Obviously a Mets win, but some players desperately need to get going. Lindor is 0 for 6, Iglesias 2 for 10, Alvarez 1 for 8. But most notably, I think, is Pete Alonso, who going into Game 3 is 1 for 5. He and Lindor have taken walks and both have seen a lot of pitches, but Alonso came into the series in a serious slump. He hit his last home run, which was also his last extra base hit in general, on September 19th. And in the 10 games from the 19th to the 30th, Alonso went 5 for 34. He is ice cold. And with his looming free agency, this could be his last game in a Mets uniform. Quintana goes 6 shutty. Myers goes 5. In the 7th, the Mets bring out Jose Butto. The game immediately takes a turn. Jake Bauers, pinch hitting for Rhys Hoskins, cranks a solo shot to right. On the very next pitch, Sal Frelick, who has not hit a home run since May 15th, goes back-to-back. The Mets are suddenly down 2-0 in the 7th with their season on the line. They go to Edwin Diaz and escape the inning. The Brewers are also throwing all their cards on the table. To bridge the gap to the 9th, they pitch Game 1 starter Freddie Peralta in the 8th. It works. Peralta retires the side in order. Diaz pitches a flawless bottom of the 8th and keeps the game 2-0 into the top of the 9th. This is it. This is the Mets' last chance. Their season could end, or they can punch a ticket to the NLDS. It's all up to them. The Brewers go to their all-star closer Devin Williams, who has the nastiest changeup in baseball. It's not going to be easy. Top of the order is up. Lindor trudges through an 8-pitch at-bat before walking to first. but Williams locks in and strikes Vientos out on 4 pitches. He gets Nimmo down 0-2, but leaves his patented changeup hanging low and inside against him, who golfs it for a single into right. Lindor goes first to third. And now, it's Pete Alonso. The Mets season is on the line. They have 2 men on with just 1 out, and it's Pete Alonso at the plate, the homegrown hero, in his 5th year with the only team he's ever known, a pending free agent. This at-bat can change the outcome of not just the game, not just the season, but quite frankly, Pete Alonso's career. Will he end his Mets career in a whimper, as he did nearly the entire month of September? No, he won't.
Swing and a ball drilled, right field, Freeling back at the wall, out of here! It's out of here! Alonso an opposite field home run, and the Mets have the lead! Pete Alonso, the polar bear, takes Devin Williams deep. And here in the 9th, the comeback kids have done it again.
Overshadowed by Pete's legacy moment, Jesse Winker is hit by a pitch right after for the 2nd time today and the 3rd time in this series. Marte gets a hit to bring him home and tack on an insurance run. Winker celebrates like this.
Winker is in. Down to second, Marte, and the Mets have added a run, and it's 4-2.
God, he really hates the Brewers. The Mets bring in David Peterson to close out the game. He gives up a leadoff single to Frelick, but strikes out Joey Ortiz and then gets Terang to ground into a double play to end the game. The 2024 New York Mets are going to the NLDS. As long as the NLDS has been a thing, which is only since 1993, the Mets have never lost in it. They made the NLDS in 1999, 2000, 2006, and 2015, and won all 4 of those series. The New York Mets made the playoffs in 1999 as a wildcard team. They had actually led the NL East for about 34 games late in the season, but in typical Mets fashion, went on a 7-game losing streak in September and lost the division to the Braves. To punch their postseason ticket, they had to play a Game 163 tiebreaker with the Cincinnati Reds. They won that game 5-0 on the back of a complete game shutout from Al Leiter. In the NLDS, the Mets faced the Arizona Diamondbacks, and ultimately won in 4 games, losing only Game 2 versus the D-backs in Phoenix. The Mets got great performances from second baseman Edgardo Alfonso and first baseman John Olerud that series, as well as lockdown appearances from their bullpen. In the NLCS, though, they of course would have to face their arch nemesis, Atlanta Braves, to whom they had already blown the division late in the season. The Mets-Braves rivalry, as we know it today, truly cultivated itself in this series. The Braves were only moved from the NL West to the NL East in 1994. They immediately became the best team in the division and actually won the NL East 10 years in a row from 1995 to 2005, even winning the World Series in 95. The Mets, from 1998 to 2000, consistently finished second place to the Braves. They finished third in 97, but were in second for the majority of that season as well. So it was during these late 90s years that the rivalry intensified. And the 1999 NLCS really saw it come to a head. Late in the regular season, things started getting more chippy than usual between the two teams. Chipper Jones was quoted as saying the Mets were dead and buried, and the fans should go home and put their Yankees gear on. Braves reliever John Rocker said he hated the Mets and asked, "How many times do we have to beat them before their fans will shut up?" Well, through Game 3 of that series, the Mets really did look dead and buried. Atlanta took Game 1 4-2, then Game 2 4-3, and then with the help of 7 shutty from Tom Glavine, they took Game 3 1-0. The Mets rallied back for 2 wins at home, forcing the series back to Atlanta. Game 5 went 15 innings. It was 2-2 from the 4th through the 14th. In the 13th, John Rocker came out to a chorus of boos and projectiles. After getting 4 outs, Rocker mocked Mets fans by booing them back.
And Rocker walks off.
In the top of the 15th, the Braves' Keith Lockhart gave them a 3-2 lead with an RBI triple. But the Mets would answer back in the bottom of the 15th in one of the more unique moments in baseball history. Shawan Dustin works a long at-bat into a leadoff single. He steals second. Matt Franco works a walk. Alfonso lays down a bunt and advances both runners. John Olerud is intentionally walked, and the bases are loaded. Todd Pratt works another walk, scoring Dustin from third. Now up is the struggling Robin Ventura. Ventura works a 2-1 count before crushing a walk-off grand slam home run over the right field fence. But here's the thing. Ventura never even made it to second base. Roger Cedeno, who is pinch running for Matt Franco, is the only runner to cross home plate as the winning run. As Ventura crosses first base, Todd Pratt, the runner ahead of him, turns around and tackles him to the ground in celebration. The rest of the Mets dugout and base runners follow suit. What should have counted as a grand slam is only credited as an RBI single. It became forever known as the Grand Slam single. The Mets win 4-3. It's now Game 6 in Atlanta. The Mets seemingly have all the momentum on their side, but almost immediately it's sucked out of them. Leiter uncharacteristically gives up 5 runs in the first inning. They get 3 back in the 5th, but give up another 2 in the bottom of the frame. But they're not going down that easy. The Mets rally once again in the 6th, getting back-to-back doubles followed by an Olerud RBI single and capped off with a Mike Piazza 2-run homer, tying the game at 7-7. The game goes back and forth the rest of the way. A run by both teams in the 8th, scoreless 9th, a run by both teams in the 10th, and then the game ended for the Mets in possibly the most embarrassing way it could have ever ended. Not only, as I mentioned all the way back in episode 1, did Bobby Bonilla go play cards in the clubhouse with Ricky Henderson all the way through the end of the game at this point, but also the Mets go scoreless in the top of the 11th, and then in the bottom of the inning, they bring in reliever Kenny Rogers. Rogers gives up a leadoff double to Gerald Williams. Brett Boone bunts him over to third. Rogers intentionally walks Chipper Jones and Brian Jordan to load the bases with 1 out, not willing to let Atlanta's hottest hitters beat them. Andrew Jones is up. The first pitch is a breaking ball, too low. Then another. It's 2-0. Jones hits the next one weakly down the third baseline, but it rolls foul. 2-1. Breaking pitch outside. 3-1. Another breaking ball. Called strike outside corner. 3-2. Full count. Season on the line. 3-2 count to Andrew Jones. Bases loaded, 1 out. You have to challenge him. You have to challenge him.
3-2 pitch. Bring on the Yankees.
A walk-off walk to lose the NLCS, to send your division rival to the World Series. A walk-off walk. Just completely uncompetitive. The Braves went to the World Series that year and were swept by none other than the New York Yankees. In December that year, John Rocker made more comments about the Mets in New York, saying he would rather retire than play for the Mets or Yankees, as well as this lovely quote about the city. It's the most hectic, nerve-wracking city. Imagine having to take the 7 train to the ballpark looking like you're riding through Beirut, next to some kid with purple hair, next to some queer with AIDS, right next to some dude who just got out of jail for the 4th time, right next to some 20-year-old mom with 4 kids. It's depressing. The biggest thing I don't like about New York are the foreigners. You can walk an entire block in Times Square and not hear anybody speaking English. Asians and Koreans and Vietnamese and Indians and Russians and Spanish people and everything up there. How the hell did they get in this country? Rocker undoubtedly played a huge role in amplifying the Mets-Braves rivalry in those early years. And here we are about 25 years later. Not much has changed. Except maybe the shit-talking is less racist and homophobic now. In the 2006 NLDS, the Mets faced the Los Angeles Dodgers. They were a little banged up with some season-ending injuries to Orlando Hernandez, Pedro Martinez, and Duaner Sanchez, but they were in this time as division winners and still the heavy favorites over the wildcard Dodgers. And deservedly so. The Mets wound up sweeping the Dodgers in 3 games. Anyway, in the NLCS that year, the Mets would face the NL Central winning St. Louis Cardinals, against whom they were also heavily favored. Game 1 was a pitcher's duel, and Tom Glavine was fortunately able to outduel the Cardinals' Jeff Weaver. Carlos Beltran hit a 2-run homer in the 6th, giving the Mets a 2-0 lead that would stay for the rest of the game. After Game 1, Cardinals first baseman Albert Pujols had some controversial things to say about Glavine. He wasn't good. He wasn't good at all. I think we hit the ball hard, and we didn't get some breaks. I say he wasn't good at all. We just didn't get some opportunities, and that's it. He did the same thing that he always does. Throw a changeup, fastball, and that was it. It's just blatantly disrespectful. His comments were condemned by Cardinals manager Tony La Russa. Glavine simply said, everyone has their own opinion. His teammate, Mets closing pitcher Billy Wagner, had more to say than that. I know if Albert would have said that about me, I wouldn't have been as veteran, as seasoned about it. I probably would have said something back. That's me. Tom is classy all the way. Tom's done so much. Tom doesn't have to stoop to tell people how good he is. His numbers speak for themselves. With 290 wins for somebody that's been in the league as long as he has is pretty self-explanatory. Tommy's stature is much bigger than Pujols. He's got a Hall of Fame induction coming. Albert doesn't. Albert's a great player, but you don't know about tomorrow. In this clubhouse, Tommy is the epitome of class and great leadership. He leads by what he does in the field. He doesn't lead by what he says in the media. Anyway, Wagner's response didn't exactly age well. And Pujols, well, kinda did. In Game 2, the Cardinals responded emphatically, putting up 4 runs against John Maine and then another 5 off the Mets bullpen, including 3 off of Billy Wagner. The Mets put up 6 runs of their own, but were shut down by the back end of the Cardinals bullpen. In Game 3, the Cardinals shut out the Mets, winning 5-0. Jeff Suppan went 8 shutty. That loss saw the Mets unable to score for 12 consecutive innings. That 12 became 14 before the 3rd inning of Game 4, but the offense woke up. The Cards scored first from a Yadier Molina RBI single, his 3rd RBI of the series, but the Mets responded with 2 home runs in the 3rd from Beltran and David Wright. The Cards tied it back up in the bottom of the frame with a Juan Encarnacion RBI triple, but the Mets put up a 3-run 5th and a 6-run 6th to ice the game, ultimately winning 12-5. St. Louis grabbed their momentum back in Game 5 with a 4-2 win. Glavine gave up 3 of those runs and was tagged with the loss. Pujols homered off of him in the 4th. So it's Game 6 now. Do or die for the Mets, with the Cardinals up in the series 3-2. John Maine pitches a fantastic game, going a scoreless 5.1 innings pitch. Jose Reyes led off the game with a solo shot, and by the 7th, the Mets are up 4-0. Billy Wagner gives up 2 runs in the 9th, but is able to get David Eckstein out to end the game. Game 7 will be played at Shea Stadium. The Cardinals are starting Jeff Suppan again. The Mets, Oliver Perez. They jump out to a 1-0 lead in the 1st after a David Wright RBI single. In the top of the 2nd, the Cardinals respond with a beautifully executed suicide squeeze to tie the game. The game stays tied for a while after that. 6th inning now. Perez still pitching. Juan Encarnacion grounds out to 3rd for the 1st out. Center fielder Jim Edmonds up. He works a 7-pitch at-bat into a walk. Edmonds on 1st, and now Cardinals 3rd baseman Scott Rowland is up. On the 1st pitch of the at-bat, Scott Rowland absolutely pisses on a fastball, middle in. It looks like it's gone immediately. Left fielder Endy Chavez is running it down. He's tracking and tracking. What are you doing, Endy? That ball is gone. Look how high it is. That ball is...
A leap and a catch! Endy Chavez
Not only does Endy Chavez make the catch of his life, he gears up right after and fires in a fantastic throw to double off Jim Edmonds at first. Perez is out of the inning safely. Like Granderson's catch in 2016, it feels like fate might be on our side. In the bottom of the 6th inning, though, the Mets miss a golden opportunity to take the lead. A walk from Carlos Delgado, an E5 from a David Wright ground ball, and an intentional walk to Shawn Green load the bases for the Mets with only 1 out. But Jose Valentin and Endy Chavez both get unproductive outs, and no runs score. Aaron Hillman is up to pitch for the Mets in the 8th inning. He intentionally walks Pujols, but that's the only base runner he allows. In the bottom of the 8th, Jeff Suppin is finally taken out after walking Carlos Beltran. Randy Flores is in and strikes out both Delgado and Wright. He gets Shawn Green to ground out for the final out of the inning. Hellman is back up for the 9th as the Mets try to preserve closer Billy Wagner for extras. He strikes out Jim Edmonds. Scott Rowland is up. 3-2 count. On the 9th pitch of the at-bat, Rowland punches a single through the left side hole. Runner on first, 1 out. Cardinals catcher Yadier Molina is up. And all it takes is 1 pitch.
Hitting 7th tonight. He hits it in the air to left field. Back is Chavez. At the wall, this ball is gone. 2-run home run, Yadier Molina. And St. Louis takes a 3-1 9th inning Game 7 lead.
It's totally deflating. But the Mets are not done. This is one of the best Mets teams in years, with a potent offense. They won't go down quietly. Cardinals rookie closer Adam Wainwright is in. Jose Valentin is up. Valentin works a 6-pitch at-bat into a single. Endy Chavez hits a single of his own immediately after. Man in scoring position, no outs. Wainwright settles in. He strikes out Cliff Floyd and then gets Reyes to line out to center. But he falls behind catcher Paul LaDuca and walks him on 5 pitches. The bases are loaded with 2 outs now. The go-ahead run is on first. And the best hitter on this potently offensive Mets team, Carlos Beltran, is at the plate. Wainwright throws a changeup. It's strike 1, looking. Wainwright throws a curveball. Beltran gets a piece of it and fouls it off his leg. It's 0-2. Wainwright throws another curveball.
Curve struck him out looking. The Cardinals are going to Michigan to take on the Tigers.
I mean, not even an attempt. Not even an attempt. Everyone knows with 2 strikes, you gotta expand the zone. You gotta protect. 2 outs and season on the line on a pitch you just saw and just fouled off, and you don't even give it a shot. It's unbelievable. Beltran was a great Met. He put up some incredible seasons for them. It was really the prime of his career. And yet there are so many Mets fans who will forever and ever only remember him for this moment. It is a deeply unfortunate stain on his legacy as a New York Met. The Cardinals beat the Detroit Tigers in the World Series in just 5 games. Detroit was overmatched in nearly every possible way. This Mets team probably could have beaten them too. The 2006 Mets were particularly disappointing because they were such a good team. But it was also the first time the Mets were in the playoffs in 6 years. In 2000, the last time they had made the NLCS, they actually beat the St. Louis Cardinals and made it to the World Series. The Mets made it into the 2000 postseason once again as a wildcard team, despite winning 94 games. In the NLDS, they faced the San Francisco Giants. This Giants team was absolutely stacked. Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds came in 1st and 2nd in MVP voting, respectively, and they also had fantastic production from right fielder Ellis Burks. Their starting rotation was flawed, helmed by Livian Hernandez and his 3.75 ERA, but the back end of their bullpen, with Rob Nen and Felix Rodriguez, was also great. The Mets were a great team too, though, headlined by Mike Piazza, Edgardo Alfonso, and Benny Agbayani on the hitting side, and Al Leiter and Mike Hampton on the pitching side. The Giants took Game 1 at home, but that was it. The Mets won the next 3 in a row and clinched an NLCS appearance at Shea Stadium. In Game 4, Mets number 4 starter Bobby Jones pitched a masterful one-hit complete game shutout to ice the series. In the 2000 NLCS, the Mets had much better luck against the Cardinals than they would 6 years later. It was actually in this series that the famous story of Rick Ankiel and his yips came into fruition. Rick Ankiel was a starting pitcher drafted by the Cardinals in 1997. He dominated the minor leagues throughout 98 and 99 and was called up in late August 1999. In his first full season in 2000, he had a 3.5 ERA and came in second in Rookie of the Year voting. Injuries to key starters like Garrett Stevenson left Ankiel as one of the only fully healthy starting pitchers on the St. Louis roster, so they relied on him heavily in the NLDS against the Braves and in this series against the Mets. And he just wasn't good. In Game 1 against the Braves, Ankiel looked good for 2 innings, but then just lost it. He couldn't locate any of his pitches, and wound up allowing 4 runs. In Game 2 against the Mets, his control continued to elude him, and the Mets were able to jump out to an early lead after he walked 2 and threw 2 wild pitches. Ankiel came into Game 5 as a reliever, and subsequently allowed a run from a walk and 2 more wild pitches. Rick Ankiel was never the same. His issues were thought to be completely psychological. It was a case of the yips, a sort of mental block that athletes get that can inhibit their motor skills and ability to execute muscle memory. From 2001 to 2004, Ankiel never regained his control. He bounced around between the majors and minors and battled some bad injuries. But then, in 2005, Ankiel announced that he was switching from pitching to the outfield. And he excelled. Rick Ankiel became a great minor league hitter and completely revitalized his career. He was called back up to the Cardinals roster as an outfielder in 2007. In his first game, he hit a clutch 7th inning 3-run home run. He continued to play as a serviceable outfielder through the rest of his career, which ended after a stint with none other than the New York Mets in 2013. Anyway, the Mets beat the Cardinals in 5 games. They would go on to the World Series to face the New York Yankees. I already discussed the World Series against the Yankees a little bit back in episode 3, but I'll expand on that. The 2000 World Series was an incredible disappointment for the New York Mets. The Yankees were only the 3rd seed in the American League and had won 87 games, 7 fewer games than the wild card Mets. It was their worst, most vulnerable season in years. And simultaneously, this was the most complete Mets team in years. But it just didn't matter. As I discussed in episode 3, in Game 1, a horrible base running misplay by Timo Perez resulted in him getting thrown out at home. But the Mets rallied back from that. The Yankees put up 2 runs in the 6th, but in the top of the 7th, the Mets responded with a 2-run single from Bubba Trammell, and then an RBI single from Edgardo Alfonso to give the Mets the lead. The Mets carried that 3-2 lead into the 9th inning, and brought in closer Armando Benitez to finish the game. Remember him? Benitez had a history of struggling versus the Yankees from his time as a Baltimore Oriole. He walked Paul O'Neill and allowed base hits to Luis Polonia and Jose Vizcaino to load the bases for Chuck Knobloch, who tied the game with a sac fly. The game remained tied at 3-3 going into the 12th, but unfortunately Mets reliever Turk Wendell gave up a walk-off RBI single in the bottom of the frame. And that was that. On to Game 2. Game 2 saw some drama unfold. Yankees Game 2 starter Roger Clemens, during the regular season, had previously hit Mike Piazza in the head with a fastball, which resulted in a concussion and put Piazza on the disabled list. So tensions may have already been high when in Game 2, during Piazza's first plate appearance, Clemens threw a fastball that shattered Piazza's bat. The ball went foul, but a fragment of the bat ricocheted towards Clemens, who picked it up off the ground and threw it at Mike Piazza as he began running up the first base line. The bench is cleared as a result, and Roger Clemens has long remained a Mets villain after the incident. Anyway, Clemens dominated this game because, of course, he did, and the Yankees carried a 6-0 lead into the 9th. The Mets made it interesting, though. In the top of the 9th, they got a 2-run homer from Piazza and a 3-run homer from Jay Payton to bring the score within 1. But it just wasn't enough. Mariano Rivera settled down and struck out Kurt Abbott to end the game. The Mets managed to win Game 3 at home, taking a 2-run lead in the bottom of the 8th after an RBI double from Agbayani and a sac fly from Bubba Trammell. Armando Benitez got the save, and on to Game 4 they went. With the Mets getting the win in Game 3, it was thought that maybe momentum was starting to swing their way. Many still considered them to be the better team. That hopefulness was ripped away on literally the first pitch of Game 4. Bobby Jones threw a fastball right down the middle to Derek Jeter, who promptly unloaded it into the left field bleachers. The Mets would trail the entire rest of the game and eventually lose 3-2. Game 5 now. The Mets are down 3-1. Backs are against the wall. Leiter versus Pettit. In the second inning, the Yankees get a Bernie Williams solo shot to go up 1-0. But the Mets respond, getting a run off a fielding error from Pettit and an RBI single from Agbayani. It's 2-1 Mets now. In the 6th, Derek Jeter hits a solo shot to tie the game. 2-2. 7th and 8th innings are scoreless. Top of the 9th, Al Leiter is at 140 pitches. He strikes out Tino Martinez, and then Paul O'Neill. Jorge Posada walks. Scott Brosius singles. First and second, 2 outs. Luis Sojo hits a slow roller up the middle that no one gets to. Jay Payton's throw from center field is a good one, but it nails Posada and gets away. Posada and Brosius score. Yankees go up 4-2. Bottom of the 9th, one last shot. Mariano Rivera walks Benny Agbayani. Next up is Mike Piazza. First pitch cutter taken for a strike. Second pitch is another cutter. Piazza hacks at it and hits it hard. It sounds like it's gone off the bat. But it's not. Bernie Williams tracks it back and stops and secures it in his glove for the final out.
A three-peat. The New York Yankees, for the 3rd time in a row, 4th time in 5 years, and 26th time in franchise history, they are the world champions.
The Mets didn't just lose this series. They were thoroughly dominated and embarrassed by their crosstown big brother rival, no less. Now they had to watch a championship parade in a city that is just as much theirs as it is the Yanks. That's Mets baseball, baby. The Mets' 2015 playoff run is my earliest memory of the Mets being good. I was technically alive for their runs in 2000 and 2006, but I was also 7 years old in 2006 and was far more interested in Legos and Pokemon than I was in baseball at the time. It wasn't really until R.A. Dickey's 2012 Cy Young campaign that I really started to pay attention to the Mets. And then 3 years later, I fell in love. First of all, just like in 2024, the Mets weren't even supposed to be there. The Washington Nationals were the favorites to win the NL East pretty much all season. But at the trade deadline, the Mets went for it, trading future Rookie of the Year Michael Fulmer to Detroit for slugger Yoenis Cespedes, who put the Mets on his back and carried them into October. With the Mets in the second half, Cespedes had a .942 OPS and slugged 17 home runs. In a pivotal series at the beginning of August, where the Mets were 3 games behind going into it, they swept the Washington Nationals, took a 1-game lead in the division, and never looked back. In as a division leader, the Mets would be tasked to face the 2-seed Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers were certainly the favorites. They had the 2014 MVP and Cy Young winner in Clayton Kershaw, as well as Zach Greinke behind him, and one of the best closers in the game in Kenley Jansen. Offensively, they were anchored by Adrian Gonzalez, former Met Justin Turner, and All-Stars Yasmani Grandal and Jock Peterson. The Mets' strengths were certainly their pitching, but their starting rotation was, albeit dominant, also very inexperienced. Almost everyone on the starting staff was making their postseason debut. Offensively, Cespedes was easily the best hitter on the team. Lucas Duda and Curtis Granderson also provided some pop, but they were certainly not seen as an offensive juggernaut. However, the early goings of the postseason for the Mets were really carried by an unlikely hero. This is Mets second baseman Daniel Murphy. Daniel Murphy had an absolutely ridiculous 2015 postseason run, seemingly out of nowhere. Murphy was always a good contact hitter. To this point, his career batting average was .288, but he never had a ton of pop, with his highest season total for home runs coming in 2015 with 14. That all seemed to change in these next few weeks. Game 1, DeGrom versus Kershaw. DeGrom pitched amazingly. In his postseason debut, he went 7 shutout innings with 13 strikeouts. Kershaw kept up with him, but allowed a home run to, Daniel Murphy in the 4th inning, and then walked 3 batters in a row in the 6th. The Dodgers replaced him with Pedro Baez, who allowed a 2 RBI single to David Wright. Kershaw finished with 3 earned runs. The Dodgers scraped across a run in the 8th, but it wasn't enough, and the Mets took Game 1 3-1. Game 2, Syndergaard versus Greinke. The Mets struck Greinke early, getting home runs from Cespedes and Michael Conforto in the 2nd, but Greinke settled in and didn't allow another run. The Dodgers answered back with a run against Syndergaard in the 4th, but the Mets took a 2-1 lead in the 7th. Kike Hernandez draws a walk. He steals 2nd. Chase Utley hits a single, and Hernandez advances to 3rd. Syndergaard is taken out for Bartolo Colon. Howie Kendrick up. Kendrick hits a comebacker up the middle, and remember that? The Chase Utley slide was one of the first things I discussed in this series all the way back in episode 1. I'll spare the details this time. Utley was ruled safe on the play, somehow, and the Mets replaced Colon with Addison Reed. Reed allowed back-to-back doubles, and the Dodgers took a 5-2 lead. They win Game 2. Game 3 now. Matt Harvey versus Brett Anderson. The Mets put up an offensive clinic in Game 3. The Dodgers jumped out to an early lead, tagging Harvey with 3 runs in the 2nd, but the Mets responded emphatically in the bottom of the frame with a long 4-run rally. In the 3rd, Travis d'Arnaud hit a 2-run homer, and Cespedes hit a 3-run bomb in the 4th. The Mets would ultimately win 13-7. Game 4, Steven Matz versus Clayton Kershaw. The Mets lost Game 4 3-1, but this game was important. It was important because it really marked the beginning of Daniel Murphy's unbelievable run. I know I said he homered in Game 1, but you'll understand what I mean soon enough. In this Game 4 loss, Murphy hits another home run in the bottom of the 4th to give the Mets their only run. Game 5, DeGrom versus Greinke. Mets get an early 1-0 lead, but relinquish it in the bottom of the 1st. A scoreless 2nd and 3rd follow. The Mets scratch across the tying run in the 4th. Scoreless 5th. It's 2-2. Up comes Daniel Murphy. On a 3-2 count, Greinke throws a fastball down and in. Murphy crushes it to right. 3-2 Mets. The Mets would never relinquish their lead and secured the series win against the Dodgers. In the NLCS, they would face the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs were a wildcard team, but they were a wildcard team in a tough NL Central division. They still had 97 wins on the year, 7 more than the Mets, and came in 2nd to the 100-win St. Louis Cardinals, whom they had just defeated in their NLDS. So despite being a wildcard team, they were also favored over the Mets. They too had a strong rotation, headlined by Jake Arrieta, the 2015 NL Cy Young winner, and behind him a strong group including John Lester and Kyle Hendricks. Offensively, their young core of Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, Kyle Schwarber, and 2015 Rookie of the Year Chris Bryant was seen as the best young core in baseball. They also had savvy veterans like Dexter Fowler and Chris Coughlin. That team would actually end up winning the World Series the next year in 2016, breaking a 100-year drought. But in 2015, they just couldn't stop Daniel fucking Murphy. In the first inning of Game 1 of the NLCS, Murphy cranked out a solo shot for his 3rd game in a row with a home run and his 4th homer overall in the postseason. Matt Harvey kept things scoreless for the Cubs until the 5th, when they got an RBI double from Starlin Castro. But the Mets answered right back with an RBI single from Granderson. They added 2 runs in the 6th and 7th, and won the game 4-2. Game 2. The Cubs are now starting their ace, Jake Arrieta. It doesn't fucking matter to Daniel Murphy. David Wright hits an RBI double just before Murphy cranks out a 2-run homer in the bottom of the 1st inning to give the Mets a 3-0 lead. That's his 4th game in a row with a home run. Syndergaard pitches a gem. The Mets win 4-1. Game 3. DeGrom versus Hendricks. After the first, it's 1-1. Third inning. Daniel Murphy.
And this ball is drilled.
5th game in a row. 6th homer total. Daniel Murphy is now the Mets' all-time postseason home run leader. He has played in 8 postseason games. The Mets end up winning Game 3 5-2. Game 4. The Mets are up in the series 3-0. Steven Matz versus Jason Hamill. The Mets jumped on Hamill quickly and overwhelmingly. In the first 2 innings, they put up 6 runs on the Cubs starter. It was 6-1 going into the 8th inning when Daniel Murphy got to the plate again. And
In the air, deep right center field. That ball is gone!
Not only does Daniel Murphy now have the all-time Mets postseason home run record, but now he also has the most consecutive postseason games with a home run of all time, breaking Carlos Beltran's 2004 record. I think Cubs fans from this era still see Daniel Murphy in their nightmares. The Mets won 8-3. Murphy was named NLCS MVP. The Mets would go on to play the Kansas City Royals in the World Series. Once again, as red-hot as the Mets were during their run, they were still considered the underdogs against the Royals. The Royals had just lost the World Series the year before. They were a fantastic team. A great lineup top to bottom with Salvador Perez, Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, Lorenzo Cain, and Kendrys Morales. A solid starting rotation with Edinson Volquez, Yordano Ventura, Chris Young, Danny Duffy, and Johnny Cueto. And the absolute best bullpen in all of baseball. Probably one of the greatest bullpens of all time. Wade Davis, Greg Holland, Kelvin Herrera, Ryan Madsen. Hell, Wade Davis received Cy Young votes that year. But the Mets have been underdogs this whole time. They just swept another heavily favored Central Division team. They can do this, right? Game 1, Harvey versus Volquez. Volquez gets a 1-2-3 first. Harvey's turn. It's Alcides Escobar. First pitch of the game.
First pitch.
It is Escobar, and he swings and hits it into left center. Back at the track, it is dropped. Cespedes couldn't make the catch. How about that effort? Digging around third. Here comes Escobar. 1-0 Kansas City.
That first pitch pretty much set the tone for the entire series. It was a total disaster. Game 1 actually went back and forth. Going into the bottom of the 9th, the Mets held a 4-3 lead. With 2 outs already in the inning, Jerry's Familia gave up a game-tying homer to Alex Gordon for his first blown save since July 30th. The game was decided in the 14th inning off of an Eric Hosmer walk-off sac fly. Game 2, DeGrom versus Cueto. New York took a 1-0 lead in the 4th, but Kansas City got to DeGrom in the 5th and took a 4-1 lead. They added 3 more in the 8th and won 7-1. In Game 3, the Mets desperately needed to set the tone, and that's exactly what Noah Syndergaard did. On the first pitch of the game, he threw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball high and tight to Alcides Escobar, dramatically backing him off the plate and irking Moustakas in the dugout. Syndergaard struck him out swinging. He did unfortunately allow a run to score that inning, but limited the damage. Bottom of the first, Yordano Ventura pitching. Granderson reaches on a single. David Wright up. We talked at length about David Wright in episode 2. At this point in his career, he's already been decimated by injuries. He's been diagnosed with spinal stenosis and only played 40 games in the regular season. It's really a miracle he's playing right now at all. But he's still the face of the franchise. He still is the New York Mets. And he's on his last legs here, trying to make it happen for the Mets in the World Series for the first time in his career. It's an 0-1 count. Ventura throws a 96-mile-an-hour fastball.
Fly ball to left. Back at the wall, and the captain's going deep.
Wright came through again in the 6th with a 2-run single, giving him 4 RBIs on the night. Mets win 9-3. I was there. Here's 16-year-old me with my dad. Standing room only. Unfortunately, that would be the Mets' only win of the series. In Game 4, the Mets took a 3-2 lead in the 8th, when Tyler Clippard walked 2 batters in a row, forcing Terry Collins to bring in Jerry's Familia. Eric Hosmer is up. On an 0-1 count, he smacks a weak, chopping ground ball to second base. Daniel Murphy, our postseason hero, charges it.
On the infield, can't turn toe. Murphy boots it. In to score is the tying run, Zobrist. And this game is 3-3 in the 8th.
Tie game. Moustakas up and he smacks an RBI single to give the Royals the lead. A Salvador Perez RBI single gives them insurance. It's Familia's second blown save in this series. Royals win 5-3. Game 5. Mets on the brink of elimination with the Royals up 3-1. We're still at Citi Field. Their ace, Matt Harvey, is starting against Edinson Volquez. Volquez has just returned to the Royals after attending his father's funeral in the Dominican Republic. His father had passed away the day of Game 1, but Volquez didn't know about it until after the game. Matt Harvey was utterly dominant. The Mets got an early lead in the 1st with a Curtis Granderson homer. They added a sac fly RBI in the 6th, and Harvey kept the Royals scoreless through the 8th inning. Terry Collins planned to take him out for Familia in the 9th to close the game, but Harvey refused. He argued with Collins and demanded to be put back out for the 9th to finish the game on his own. Collins conceded. Harvey would pitch the 9th. He immediately walked Lorenzo Cain, who was then driven in by an Eric Hosmer double. And that was enough for Collins. He called in Familia. The Mets are still up 2-1. Familia gets Moustakas to ground out, but that advances Hosmer to 3rd. There's 1 out. Salvador Perez is up. And then an absolute nightmare of a defensive mishap. It's Familia's 3rd blown save of the series. He gets the 3rd out. A scoreless 10th and 11th follow. And then, in the top of the 12th, the game is blown open. Duda and Darno go down swinging. Conforto hits a single. Wilmer Flores is up. He strikes out looking. Royals win. In the offseason, Daniel Murphy signed with the Washington Nationals. In 2016, he came 2nd in MVP voting. 2015 was the year I fell in love with the Mets. It was also the year I truly learned how to be disappointed in them. What it really meant to be a Mets fan. Anyway, that's enough Mets postseason history for now. We'll pick up on it more later. So the Mets beat the Milwaukee Brewers in the wild card round and are now in the NLDS. Which, by the way, who are they facing? The Philadelphia Phillies. The Mets are underdogs again. As the 3rd wildcard seed, they're going to be underdogs throughout the entirety of the playoffs, no matter how far they go. The Phillies won the division by 6 games. But the Mets have a trick up their sleeve. It's October 4th, the day before the NLDS. The New York Mets X account sends out a tweet at 3:37 p.m. 20 minutes later, Carlos Mendoza confirms what everyone already speculated. Kodai Senga is back, and he's starting Game 1. I realize I haven't really established this yet in this series, but Senga throws a pitch that's become known as the ghost fork. It's a fork ball, which is kind of like a slower splitter that has dramatic north-south movement. It's called the ghost fork because it disappears on hitters, like a ghost would. So Senga is often surrounded with ghost imagery. Mendoza doesn't tell reporters how long he's planning to have Senga out there, but it's expected that it won't be more than a couple innings, as he's just now returning from his injury and isn't really stretched out. Regardless, it feels like a chess move. So here we are. Game 1. Somehow, this is the first time ever that the Mets and Phillies have played each other in the postseason. It's Senga versus Phillies ace and former Met, Zack Wheeler. Wheeler, in the past few years, has often looked like the best pitcher in baseball. This will be a tough matchup. In the top of the first, the Mets go down in order helplessly. Wheeler is pumping 98 miles an hour, several ticks above his usual velocity. That, coupled with the intense shadows at Citizens Bank Park during the daytime, means Mets hitters are in for a long one. In the bottom of the first, those shadows prove to mean nothing to Phillies leadoff hitter Kyle Schwarber. On a 1-1 count, he welcomes Kodai Senga back from the injured list with a deep blast to left. 1-0. Senga settles down, though, and pitches 2 full innings with 3 strikeouts before David Peterson comes in for relief. Wheeler is dealing. The Mets can't get anything going against him at all. A walk here, a single there, but nothing strung together. Peterson holds his own, though, making the game a pitching duel. Wheeler goes 7 shutout innings and allows just 1 hit. Peterson makes it through the 5th before Reed Garrett relieves him and shuts out the Phillies for 2 more innings. It's still 1-0. Top of the 8th, Jeff Hoffman, who's had a great year, relieves Zack Wheeler. He immediately gives up a single to Francisco Alvarez. Harrison Bader pinch runs. Lindor walks, Bader to second. And then, Vientos cracks a line drive down the left field line. Bader scores. Tie game. In comes Matt Strahm. He's probably been the Phillies' best reliever all year, and was named an All-Star. It's left on left to Brandon Nimmo. But it doesn't matter. Nimmo laces a 2-strike single to score Lindor and advance Vientos to third. Alonso is up next, and he sac flies in Vientos. Jose Iglesias singles and gets Nimmo to second. Strahm is taken out for Orion Kerkering. Another great Phillies bullpen piece. And he immediately gives up an RBI single to JD Martinez. Starling Marte caps off the inning with another sac fly. The Mets have pounced on the Phillies' best bullpen arms and have blown this game wide open. It's 5-1. In the 9th, the Mets and Phillies both add another run each, and the game ends 6-2 Mets. A massive win, one that steals home field advantage and wastes a Zack Wheeler start for the Phillies. Game 2 is an absolute must-win for the Phillies. You can't go to Citi Field down 2-0. It's Christopher Sanchez versus Luis Severino. The first 2 innings are scoreless, but the Mets strike first. Lindor hits a 1-out single, and Vientos smashes a home run to right to bring him in. 2-0. The game goes back and forth. The Mets add a run, the Phillies tie it at 3-3, and then the Mets take the lead with another home run, 4-3. But in the bottom of the 8th, the Phillies get a rally going, and against Edwin Diaz, Bryson Stott hits a 2 RBI triple. McGill comes in and gives up an RBI fielder's choice. It's now 6-4 Phillies. It's the top of the 9th now. The Mets have one last shot to take back their lead. The Phillies bring in Matt Strahm. He gets Bader swinging, but Lindor works an 0-2 count into a single up the middle. And then,
Vientos hits it high in the air to left field. It's got legs. It's deep. It's back near the wall. It is gone!
6-6. This game isn't over yet. Nimmo and Alonso both fly out, but the Mets have an opportunity now to force extra innings and steal another game from the Phillies. McGill strikes out Austin Hayes. 1 out. He gets Kyle Schwarber to pop up. 2 outs. It's Trey Turner. McGill battles, but ultimately walks him. It's Harper now. They battle for 7 pitches, but Harper works a walk. Still 2 outs. Castellanos up.
Castellanos. Into left field, down the line, it's a fair ball, and the Phillies have tied the series. Back to Queens, 1 apiece. Castellanos the hero.
Ball game. What a heartbreaking way to go out. But look, this is fine. It's fine. Going into an opposing stadium in a series like this, the best you can hope for is a split. The Mets still have stolen home field advantage, and now, finally, we're going back to Citi Field. It's the first time in 2 weeks that the Mets are back in Queens. Game 3 now. Minaya versus Nola. Personally, I was feeling great about this game. The Mets, and particularly Pete Alonso, have had a great history of success against Nola. And Game 3 proved no different. Both pitchers worked a scoreless first, but like clockwork, Pete Alonso jumped on Nola with a solo shot in the second, 1-0. A scoreless third followed, and a scoreless top of the fourth. Bottom of the frame now, Alonso up again, but he strikes out. Iglesias then lines out. Jesse Winker up.
This time Winker cranks it. It's a no-doubt shot. Upper deck, 2-0.
I was at this game. The whole stadium knew it was gone the second it left the bat. I think StatCast is bullshit because there's no way that ball didn't go at least 600 feet. In the bottom of the sixth now, the Mets get another rally going and get 2 more runs. Jose Iglesias adds another 2 runs in the 7th with a single, but Alonso is thrown out at home to end the inning. In the top of the 8th, the Phillies finally respond with back-to-back RBI singles, but it's too little too late. The Mets add another run in the bottom of the 8th, and Ryan Stanek finishes the game. Mets win 7-2. They're really gonna do it, aren't they? I'm a Mets fan. Maybe you are too. At the very least, at this point, you are familiar with the psychology of Mets fandom. At this point in time, are we confident? Sure. But it's a nervous confidence. And maybe that's an oxymoron, but so much of being a Mets fan is, I guess. The Mets are, objectively, in a great spot. Up 2-1 on the series with an opportunity to close it out at home. But being in a great spot hasn't stopped this team from blowing it before. So personally, I won't believe it until I see it, that the Mets are really gonna win this thing. It's Game 4. Phillies season on the line. We're still at Citi. Jose Quintana versus Ranger Suarez. First inning. Phils go down in order. The Mets get something going. Lindor strikes out swinging, but Vientos hits a double to the left center gap. Nimmo walks, and Alonso hits a weak single that's only enough to get Vientos to third. Bases are loaded, 2 outs. Iglesias up.
Whoa. Waved up. Got him.
Martinez up.
Swinging at the first. 1. Out in front. 1-2. He got Martinez.
Jeez. What a wasted opportunity. Second inning. Quintana walks JT Realmuto, but gets through the inning unscathed. Mets get something going. Marte walks, and then Tyrone Taylor smacks a single to left. Marte advances to second. Man in scoring position with no outs. Alvarez up.
Alvarez. Everybody they can to win this game.
Lindor up.
Bulk guy. 2 pitch. Is waved on and missed on another curveball.
Vientos up. And Vientos' single is only enough to get Marte to third. The bases are loaded now with 2 outs. Brandon Nimmo is up.
On the ground to first, Harper is there, and Ranger Suarez wiggles his way out of another bases-loaded jam.
Third inning. Phils go down in order. Alonso walks, but Iglesias strikes out and Martinez hits into a double play. Fourth inning. Phils get something going. Harper draws a 1-out walk. Castellanos doubles to left. It's only enough to get Harper to third. Alec Boehm up. 3-2 count.
Payoff pitch. Bouncer to the left side. Vientos has it, and he bobbles it. He has no play. Harper scores, and the Phillies strike first in the 4th.
That's unfortunate. In the bottom of the 4th, the Mets go down in order, and I'm sure are starting to really regret not scratching across any runs with the bases loaded in the 1st and 2nd. 5th inning. Quintana hits Schwarber, but gets through the inning unscathed. The Mets get something going. Lindor smacks a double, and Vientos walks. 2 men on, no outs. And then...
Nimmo comes home, and... little roller out in front of the plate, picked up by Realmuto.
It's scheduled it. Pencil it in for the rest of the game. This is unbelievable. Sixth inning, Harper hits a double, and Reed Garrett comes in for Quintana. He gets 2 strikeouts, but walks Bohm in between. Peterson then replaces him and gets Bryson Stott to ground out. The Mets get something going. You know what? No, they do not. They get nothing going. Whatever, man. JD Martinez hits a single up the middle. He advances to second on a wild pitch. Marte is then hit by a pitch. Hoffman throws another wild pitch, and both runners advance. He walks Tyrone Taylor. Bases loaded, nobody out. Francisco Alvarez up. And
On the ground is short, picked up by Turner. He'll fire home for the force out to prevent Martinez from scoring.
what did I tell you? It's scheduled. I mean, this is really, truly unbelievable. Of course, with another bases loaded opportunity, the third of the game, the Mets are going to squander it once again. Francisco Lindor up. 2-2 count.
The 2-1. Lindor towards right center field. This one is back. It is gone! Grand slam! And Lindor puts the Mets on top. The biggest swing of the season for New York.
Holy shit. I mean, holy fucking shit. Is Francisco Lindor the greatest baseball player of all time? I mean, no, not really, but in this moment, after this season that he's had, fuck yes, he is. Peterson keeps the game scoreless until the 9th. Kerkering and Strom do the same. Diaz comes in. He walks JT Realmuto. He walks Bryson Stott. Cody Clemens is up.
Clemens goes down swinging one away.
Brandon Marsh is up.
Marsh hits it in the air to center. Bader backing. 2 away.
Kyle Schwarber is up. The 2024 New York Mets are going to the NLCS. They have just beaten the NL East leading divisional rival Philadelphia Phillies in their very first playoff series against each other ever. What can you even say about this team anymore? On the other side of the country, the Los Angeles Dodgers fend off the San Diego Padres in a fierce 7-game series. The Mets will play the Dodgers in the 2024 NLCS. The last time the Mets played the Dodgers in the postseason was the 2015 NLDS, as we just talked about. But before that, it was the 1988 NLCS. We already discussed the 1988 NLCS game by game in great detail in episode 2 of this series, through the lens of Bobby Ojeda's gardening accident, of course. The Mets were heavily favored over the Dodgers and had beaten them 10 times in the regular season. But in the playoffs, that just doesn't matter. It was a hard-fought 7-game series, and the Dodgers came out on top. This was all now before the division series was even a thing. So the top 2 teams in each league played each other in the championship series, and then those 2 teams played each other in the World Series. Much simpler times. 2 years before 1988, of course, was the Mets' second World Series title in 1986. We've also talked a great deal about 1986. And again, there's been 100 documentaries and books about the 86 and 69 Mets, so I don't really want to spend too much time here either. But there are a couple more stories here I want to mention, both of which happened in the pivotal Game 6. It's the top of the first. Bobby Ojeda is pitching. Wade Boggs hits a single to left. Ojeda gets Marty Barrett with a flyout, and he's now pitching to Bill Buckner when there's a man. A man is flying into Shea Stadium via parachute. The parachute reads, "Go Mets." Upon landing, he is immediately arrested. The man is actor and producer Michael Sergio. After his stunt, Sergio was held in jail for 3 weeks because he refused to give up the name of the pilot who flew him over Shea. The FAA wanted to revoke the pilot's license since the stunt was especially dangerous being so close to LaGuardia Airport, but Sergio never folded, and the FAA eventually gave up. The game reaches the 10th inning. The Red Sox take a 5-3 lead. In the bottom of the inning, after Wally Backman and Keith Hernandez both hit fly balls for the first 2 outs, the Mets briefly flash "Congratulations Red Sox, 1986 World Series champions" on the Shea Stadium Jumbotron. It's quickly taken off the screen. The Mets, of course, would end up winning this game because of Bill Buckner's E3.
Little roller up along first, behind the bag, it gets through Buckner, here comes Knight, and the Mets win it!
And then they would rally to win Game 7 8-5 for the World Series title. Across the diamond, a 41-year-old veteran pitcher mourns the loss. He just finished the last season of his career in great disappointment. His name is Tom Seaver. A point I've driven home multiple times now is that the 1986 Mets were supposed to be a dynasty. But drugs and alcohol and chemistry issues and behavioral issues and unexpected regression and bad trades all worked against them. And by 1989, they were an afterthought. In March 1989, after a spring training photo session, Darryl Strawberry got into a heated argument with Keith Hernandez. Strawberry had been griping about his contract situation, and Hernandez criticized him in the media. The fight ended with Strawberry attempting a swing at Hernandez and being restrained. When Gary Carter got involved, Strawberry told him, "You're next." Later that year, the Mets traded Lenny Dykstra and Roger McDowell to the Phillies for Juan Samuel. Dykstra, nicknamed Nails for his tough demeanor, was a huge part of the 1986 Mets team. He would end up having the best years of his career with the Phillies, including 8.9 and 6.6 WAR seasons. Samuel never panned out for the Mets. In 1989, the Mets also traded other key parts of their 1986 roster like Rick Aguilera, Mookie Wilson, and Randy Myers. Any hope for a dynasty was officially over. For what was once such an incredible, dominant team, it was a real sad way to go out. The last time the Mets won the World Series before that was, of course, their Miracle Mets run in 1969. Again, this series is not about when the Mets were good, so I won't spend too much time here. But just for the sake of it, we'll take a look. The Mets throughout the 60s were horrible. I mean, just look at this. Their most wins in a season was 73? That's real bad. Going into 69, the Mets didn't make any significant trades or acquisitions, and the team was largely the same as it was in 68. So what changed? Well, pretty much everyone on the team had career years at the same time. Tom Seaver won the Cy Young that year, and he and Jerry Koosman developed into clear 1 and 2 starters. Additionally, rookie Gary Gentry had a fantastic debut season as the number 3 behind them. It was just great pitching, great hitting, and great managing from Gil Hodges. And it all summed up to a 100-win season out of nowhere. Going into the NLCS against the Atlanta Braves, the very first NLCS of all time, the Mets were considered underdogs, despite having won 7 more games in the regular season. The Braves were loaded with talent like Hank Aaron and Phil Niekro, and the Mets had really only been an elite team in the last 2 months of the season, and were actually in 3rd place for the majority of it. The Mets swept the Braves in 3 games. They weren't particularly close games either. In the World Series, the Mets were underdogs again, this time against the Baltimore Orioles. That Orioles team was considered among the best rosters of all time. So when the Mets took care of business in just 5 games, a gentleman's sweep, it was a massive upset. Don Clendenon hit 3 home runs in the series en route to his World Series MVP award. There are no words. There's a great quote by the legendary musician Graham Parsons, as told by Bill Janovitz in his 2005 book, The Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street. It's 1969. Parsons, disillusioned with the Vietnam War and Nixon's recent election, with a painful observance of the dichotomy of America, remarks to his friend, Stanley Booth, "Look at it, man. They call it America, and they call it civilization, and they call it television, and they believe in it, and salute it, and sing songs to it, and eat and sleep and die still believing in it, and I don't know. Then sometimes the Mets come along and win the World Series." Similarly to the years following 1986, the Mets could not replicate their success in '69. They fell way short of expectations in each of the following 3 years, with a couple of bad late-season collapses mixed in there. But then finally, in 1973, they somehow put it all together again. The 1973 Mets limped into the playoffs. They had only won 82 games in the season and were plagued by injuries. But they got their key players back at the end of the year and put together enough wins to take the NL East over the Cardinals and sneak them into October. On July 9th, with the Mets in last place, during a team meeting, closer Tug McGraw rallied his teammates with the phrase, "You gotta believe." It became not only the rallying cry of the 1973 season, but the rallying cry of the Mets franchise for years to come. The Mets remained in last place until the end of August, and then went 21-8 in the month of September. Facing the early iteration of the Big Red Machine Cincinnati Reds dynasty in the NLCS, a team that won 99 games, the Mets were, again, underdogs. And the series went 6 games. It had pitching duels, it had blowouts, it had brawls. Really everything you could hope for in a best of 7. And the Mets came out on top. They would face the Reggie Jackson-led Oakland Athletics in the World Series. That World Series was an interesting one. So the Mets had limped into the postseason, and now, despite playing an excellent NLCS, we're limping into the World Series. Back in Game 4 against the Reds, Rusty Staub made a spectacular catch that also happened to separate his right shoulder. This took him out of Game 5 and now Game 1 of the World Series as well. Staub was the Mets' best offensive player, by far, hitting 3 homers in the NLCS before getting injured. The Mets were forced to start 41-year-old Willie Mays in Game 1 at center field, a position he simply could not play anymore. It was hard to watch. Game 1. The Mets' John Matlack is one of only 4 pitchers to pitch Game 1 of a World Series while having a losing record in the regular season. Game 1 was tight, but in the 3rd inning, Oakland A's pitcher Ken Holtzman laced a double off Matlack and scored when A's shortstop Bert Campaneris hit a ground ball through Felix Mion's legs. I want to point out that 1973 is the first year that the designated hitter rule went into effect in the American League, and so Ken Holtzman only had 1 plate appearance during the entire regular season. The A's tacked on another run when Campaneris stole second and eventually scored on a Joe Ruddy single. The Mets got a run back in the next inning, but were shut out the rest of the way. A's win 2-1. Game 2. This is where it gets really interesting. Game 2 had a lot going on. I mean, a lot. The Mets got a lot of offense with home runs from Cleon Jones and Wayne Garrett, as well as a 4-run 6th inning and a 4-run 12th to come back for the win. Reggie Jackson looked sharp though, coming through with an RBI double in the 7th and an RBI single in the 9th to chip away at the Mets' lead. The A's tied it, and the game stayed tied until the 12th, where Willie Mays accomplished his final career hit and RBI to give the Mets the lead and start off their 4-run rally. But during that 12th inning, Oakland A's second baseman Mike Andrews made 2 very costly errors. After the game, A's owner Charles Finley was so enraged by Andrews' errors that he made him sign an affidavit claiming that he was injured to get him out of the lineup and allow the A's to call up Manny Trio, who was previously left off of their postseason roster. This move was very upsetting to manager Dick Williams, as well as many of the players on the Oakland A's. So during Game 3, members of the Oakland A's, including Dick Williams, wore armbands with Mike Andrews' number 17 on them to show solidarity with him and how much they disagreed with Finley's move. Game 3 was a pitcher's duel, with Tom Seaver actually outdueling Catfish Hunter. However, Harry Parker gave up the go-ahead run to Campaneris in the 11th, and Raleigh Fingers shut the Mets down for the save. A's win, 3-2. So it's like, that's fucking great, right? The Mets aren't even supposed to be here. They're just here, doing what they can, trying to be competitive and win a World Series. And the A's, already a dominant team that won 94 games in the regular season, a team that already has Reggie Jackson playing with a grudge against the team who refused to pick him number 1, this team gets to have a goddamn beautiful moment of solidarity that brings them closer together like it's some kind of fucking movie. The Mets are not the main characters here. This is maybe the one story in this entire series where the Mets are not the main characters. The Oakland Athletics are the main characters here. Game 4 now. Prior to the game, MLB Commissioner Bowie Kuhn forces the A's to reinstate Andrews on their roster. When Andrews came into the game as a pinch hitter in the 8th inning, he did so to a standing ovation by Mets fans. It wound up being Andrews' last career Major League at-bat. Thankfully, John Matlack punctured the A's plot armor and pitched a gem, going 8 innings, allowing just 1 run on 3 hits. Rusty Staub, back from injury, cranked a 3-run bomb off Ken Holtzman in just the 1st inning, taking him out of the game. Mets win 6-1. Series tied 2-2. Game 5, another pitcher's duel between Jerry Koosman and Vida Blue. With a John Milner RBI single, a Don Hahn RBI triple, and a Tug McGraw save, the Mets got the win 2-0. The Mets were now heading back into Oakland with a 3-2 series lead. They had a lot to feel good about. Maybe all these shenanigans with Andrews and the A's was actually all a clubhouse distraction. Maybe the Mets could take advantage. They could end it all and be World Series champs if they just win 1 more game. Game 6 was another low-scoring affair. Reggie Jackson hit RBI doubles in both the 1st and 3rd innings off Tom Seaver to put the A's up 2-0. Felix Mion got a run back for the Mets with a single in the 8th inning, taking Catfish Hunter out of the game. But Jackson struck again with a single in the bottom of the 8th. He advanced to 3rd on an error and then scored on a sac fly to give the A's an insurance run. Raleigh Fingers closed it out, and the A's won 3-1. Series tied. Game 7 was a 3rd rematch between Game 1 and 4 starters John Matlack and Ken Holtzman. Both pitchers were dealing early on, but everything changed in the 4th inning. Just absolutely improbably, just like in Game 1, Ken Holtzman once again laced another double off of John Matlack and was then brought home by a Campaneris 2-run homer. Holtzman has now doubled and scored twice in this series, after, again, having 1 at-bat in the regular season. When he was allowed to hit in previous years, he wasn't a particularly good hitting pitcher either, with a career slash line of 163, 186, 208. He hit 19 doubles in his career over the span of 15 years. And Matlack was a great pitcher for the Mets, but later in the same inning, he gave up another 2-run homer. This time to, of course, who else but Reggie Jackson. The A's tacked on another run in the 5th for good measure. The Mets responded with runs of their own in the 6th and then the 9th, but it just wasn't enough. After leading the series 3-2, the Mets lost in Game 7. For the 2nd consecutive year, the Oakland Athletics were World Series champions. And against the Mets, Reggie Jackson, whom the Mets could have had, was named World Series MVP. The Oakland A's just had too much going for them, narratively speaking, for the Mets to overcome. They weren't just a good baseball team. They were poets. They had to win this series, and so they did. And that's it. That's the history of the Mets in the postseason going into 2024. Every single playoff run. The Mets are now in the postseason for the 11th time in franchise history. They, like in so many other years, have overcome great odds to make it past the favored Milwaukee Brewers, past the favored Philadelphia Phillies, and now, just 4 wins away from the World Series, are tasked against the heavily favored Los Angeles Dodgers. A Dodgers team whose sweep of the Mets at the end of May marked rock bottom for the team, but also essentially propelled the Mets to the heights that they have reached thus far. So this is the true test of the season, even more so than the Brewers series, even more so than the Phillies series. Beating this Dodgers team to advance to the World Series after what happened earlier in the season, that would be poetry. The Dodgers won 98 games in the regular season. Their all-star cast includes, of course, Shohei Ohtani, who just put up the first 50 home run, 50 stolen base season in MLB history, as well as Mookie Betts and known Met killer Freddie Freeman. Their bullpen is among the best in baseball, with Michael Kopech, Evan Phillips, and Blake Trinan. Their starting rotation is their biggest weakness right now, as they're very banged up, but they still have guys like Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who all have the capability to be dominant. This is going to be an uphill battle for the Mets. Game 1, Dodger Stadium. The Mets are, again, starting Kodai Senga. The Dodgers are starting Flaherty. There was really absolutely nothing suspenseful or that interesting in this game from a narrative standpoint, so I'll just come out and say it. The Mets got absolutely smacked. Senga gave up 2 runs in the first and another run in the second before being pulled for Reed Garrett. Garrett kept things scoreless until he was pulled for David Peterson, who promptly allowed 3 more runs in the fourth. Jose Butto gave up a bases-clearing 3-run double to Mookie Betts in the 8th, and Jack Flaherty went 6 innings, allowed no runs, and struck out 6. The Mets were shut out and lost 9-0. It was a dominant game from the Dodgers. And hopefully, a wake-up call for the Mets. Shake it off and come ready to play tomorrow. Game 2 now. With the Dodgers' rotation so out of whack, manager Dave Roberts elects for a bullpen game. Given the strength of the Dodgers' bullpen and their plethora of quality arms, this is something that they're comfortable with despite being in Game 2 of the NLCS. They open with Ryan Brazier. The Mets start Sean Manaea. It's the top of the first inning. Lindor is up. 8th pitch of the at-bat.
Comes Lindor, hits a fly ball towards the right field corner. It carries well and leaves the yard. Lindor sparks it.
Lindor crushes a leadoff home run to put the Mets up 1-0 and put the Mets on the board for the first time this series. Vientos is up next, and he hits a screaming liner that is unfortunately caught for the first out. Nimmo walks, but Alonso grounds into a double play to end the inning. Manaea gets Ohtani and Mookie swinging before walking Teoscar Hernandez, but he then gets Freeman for the third out. Top of the second now. Dodgers replace Ryan Brazier with Landon Knack. The first pitch he throws is deposited into left for a Starling Marte single. He then walks Jesse Winker on 7 pitches, before finally getting the first out of the inning with a Jose Iglesias pop fly. And then, Tyrone Taylor. He battles a 2-strike count before lining a double to left that scores Marte and advances Winker to third. Francisco Alvarez pops up for the second out of the inning. With runners on first and second, and the top of the order coming up, the Dodgers refuse to take their chances pitching to Lindor. They intentionally walk him to load the bases. For the white-hot Mark Vientos. Vientos, later on, said that he took Lindor's intentional walk personally. And, well, the first pitch is a slider, outside for ball 1. Another slider. Vientos chops it foul. Another slider, foul. Knack finally comes in with a fastball. It's high. Vientos just gets a piece of it. Back to the slider. It's in the dirt. 2-2 now. Another slider. Vientos fights it off. Another slider. Outside. 3-2 now. This might be the most breaking ball plate discipline I've ever seen Vientos have in an at-bat. That's the scouting report on it. Throw the breaking ball and he will chase. But not today. Knack throws another slider. Vientos fouls it off again. It's still 3-2. It's the 9th pitch of the at-bat. They don't want to walk in a run. And so, in Landon Knack's eyes, or maybe in catcher Will Smith's eyes, Vientos has finally earned another fastball.
Crack to right center field. Pages on the move to the track. He couldn't find it. That's because it's over the wall. Grand slam, Vientos.
6-0. The Dodgers do eventually get on the board with a solo shot from Max Muncy in the 5th, and they add 2 more runs in the 6th as well. But the Mets get some insurance with an RBI single from Starling Marte at the top of the 9th, and then Edwin Diaz closes things up with a 4-out save. Mets win 7-3. A much-needed response. And now, we go back to Citi Field. Games 3 and 4, despite coming home to Citi Field, did not go the Mets' way at all. Luis Severino actually pitched great in his start, but the Mets' infield misplayed several balls hit their way, including Severino himself, allowing the Dodgers to scrape across 2 runs in the 2nd inning. Sevy lasted 2 outs into the 4th, with 0 earned runs, but the Mets losing 2-0. On the flip side of things, Walker Buehler shut the Mets down for 4 innings himself. The Dodgers bullpen closed things down from there on out. They also tacked on several more runs off homers from Kike Hernandez, Ohtani, and Max Muncy. The Mets got shut out again. 8-0. In Game 4, Ohtani kicked things off with a leadoff homer against Jose Quintana. Mark Vientos answered back with a solo shot of his own, but the Mets just couldn't keep it close. The Dodgers got a 2-run rally in the 3rd, and another 2-run rally in the 4th. In the bottom of the 3rd, the Mets were able to scrape out another run thanks to Brandon Nimmo hustling down the line to beat a double play, but it just wasn't enough. It was never gonna be enough. The Dodgers scored 5 more runs that game, and the Mets couldn't get anything else going. Baseball is a weird sport. It is far and away the most superstitious sport on earth. The players have their superstitions, their rituals and habits and routines that instill confidence in themselves, and the fans likewise often have their own as well. And what a bizarre, superstitious season the Mets have had to this point. They've rallied around a McDonald's mascot, a pop star second baseman, but also the Hawk Tuah girl and a United States veteran named Seymour Wiener. I don't think the Mets players have cared all that much about any of this stuff. I'm sure they credit their success to hard work and preparation, but even they have their own rallying objects. The most recent being Pete Alonso's playoff pumpkin, a pumpkin he picked in Milwaukee before the wildcard round. Or look, here's a classic. Just before the Mets' comeback victory in Game 3 against the Brewers, here's Sean Manaea donning the rally cap. Naturally, as a fan, while watching Games 3 and 4, I did everything in my power to will the Mets to victory. In Game 3, I stacked all the Mets hats I owned on top of my head. When that didn't seem to work, I switched to a rally cap. Nothing. In Game 4, I was actually in attendance at Citi Field, and this time my line of thinking was a little different. In Games 3 and 4 of the NLDS, the Citi Field staff gave out orange rally towels, but in the NLCS, they gave out blue ones. I was convinced, from watching on TV the previous day, that the blue rally towels were the problem. So I brought my orange one that I got from the NLDS, I draped it over my head, under my Mets hat, just as I had done during Game 4 against the Phillies. Nothing. I switched to the blue towel under my hat and waved around the orange one instead. Nothing. I put both towels under my hat. Nothing. I rally capped. Nothing. And as I sat there in my seat in the late innings, I sat back and thought to myself how maybe none of this stuff actually matters. Is it just silly to rally around things that have no control over the game whatsoever? Why would anything I do at home, or heck, even at the field way up in the nosebleeds, have any effect on what happens during the game? It doesn't make any sense at all. The Mets weren't winning before because of grimace, no matter what McDonald's would have you believe. They were winning because they are a good baseball team. And they are losing now because the Dodgers are a better baseball team. That's just how sports work. The Mets are down 3-1. It's a best-of-7 series. You can never count this team out. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel hopeless at this point. I had a bad personal reaction to the Mets Game 3 loss. I felt absolutely horrible and I didn't want to talk to anybody. When the game was over at like 11:30 p.m. or so, I went out and walked my dog for 20 minutes just to cool off. But after the Game 4 loss, while still disappointed, I slept that night and woke up the next morning at peace with whatever the results of this series may be. If the Mets continue to write this story and make a miraculous comeback, that's awesome. And obviously, I would love that. But if it's not in the cards, that's okay. This is a good baseball team. But that doesn't change the fact that no one expected them to be here. It doesn't change the fact that this team was 11 games under 500 and rallied all the way back to the goddamn NLCS. The season was a success once they made the playoffs. This team has endeared themselves in every Mets fan's heart. And then Game 5 happened. Backs against the wall, win or go home, do or die, and Pete Alonso comes up huge again with another 3-run homer, this time in the first. The Mets get a 5-run rally in the third and go up 8-1. 2 more runs in the fourth, 1 more in the sixth, and 1 more in the eighth. Is the magic back? Don't get me wrong, the Dodgers certainly made it interesting. 9-hole hitter Andy Pages hit 2 home runs, including a 3-run shot to make it 5-10 in the fifth. Mookie Betts hit a homer to make it 6-10. But the Mets held on. They're not done yet. They didn't hear no fucking bell. And suddenly, just like that, I believe. I believe again. You gotta believe. And I'll tell you why. Baseball, like many other sports, is a game of matchups. The Phillies were a really good team that finished with a better record than the Mets this year. But the Mets pitching staff matched up well against their lineup, because the Phillies' hitting philosophy is to pull the ball and swing out of your shoes to hit home runs. The Mets pitching staff led the league in walks this year, meaning they often pitch out of the zone. The Phillies chased those pitches, and the Mets were able to shut them down. The walks have come back to bite the Mets in this series against the Dodgers. Their hitters are much more disciplined. But the Mets still have a chance here. They're starting Sean Manaea in Game 6, who pitched a gem in Game 2 and shut the Dodgers' potent offense down. The Dodgers, meanwhile, are electing for another bullpen game, and the Mets were able to take advantage of that last time. If the Mets are able to push a Game 7, the Dodgers' bullpen is going to be spent from the previous day. And even though the Mets were shut down by Walker Buehler in Game 3, players like Pete Alonso and Jesse Winker have great career numbers against him. Plus, Severino, who would be pitching that game, actually did well in his Game 3 start and only gave up runs due to shoddy infield defense. Anything can happen, and god damn it, I believe. You gotta believe. The Mets struck first in Game 6. Lindor walked and then reached second on a wild pitch, then third on a Nimmo groundout, and eventually scored on an infield single from Pete Alonso. The Dodgers, though, answered right back. Tommy Edman, who's been killing the Mets all series, hit a 2 RBI double. In the third, he struck again for a 2-run homer. Phil Maton comes in to pitch in relief of Minaya and gives up another 2-run homer to Will Smith. The Dodgers exit the third, up 6-1. It's certainly looking rough, but Mark Vientos comes through and instills hope once again with a 2-run homer to bring the Mets within 3. What a postseason he's had, right? It's scoreless again until the 6th. Ohtani hits an RBI single to make it 7-3 Dodgers. The Mets answer back with a sac fly, 7-4. Kodai Senga is pitching now. He gets through a scoreless 7. Blake Trinan strikes out the side. Senga's back up for the 8th, and the inning gets away from him. He allows 3 more runs, 10-4 Dodgers. Well, this is it. The Mets are down to their final 3 outs. Winker goes down swinging. Marte grounds out back to Trinan. It's Tyrone Taylor. He takes a ball, then 2 strikes looking. Final strike, final out. And Taylor pokes the ball to center field. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself as the Fox announcers remark how the Mets wouldn't go down without a fight. McNeil is up. He takes a strike looking as Taylor steals second. And then, on a sweeper that hangs a little too much in the zone, he lines it to right for another single. As Taylor came around to score, my chuckle turned into a single tear down my cheek. Backs against the wall, of course, they scrape across one more run. This team would never go down with just a whimper. The Mets are poets. The Mets have always been poets, and have never not been poets. They have always been poets because baseball is poetry. And the Mets, just like 29 other baseball teams, are poets. Alvarez grounds out to second. The game and the Mets season is over. The Dodgers are going to play the Yankees in the World Series. Former New York team, of which the Mets were born from their ashes, and the Mets' very own big brother. It's disappointing. But nothing is going to take away the joy Mets fans felt watching their team this season. As Howie Rose eulogized his team in the final moments of Game 6, he said, "I was 15 years old when they won the 1969 World Series. That's 55 years ago. So you can do the math yourself. But I'll just say this
about the 2024 New York Mets. They have made this 70-year-old feel 15 all over again."
On December 8th, 2024, ESPN reporter Jeff Passan broke the baseball internet. Breaking. Superstar outfielder Juan Soto and the New York Mets are in agreement on a 15-year, $765 million contract, sources tell ESPN. It is the largest deal in professional sports history. The 2024-25 offseason was all about the Juan Soto sweepstakes. I have never mentioned Juan Soto's name once throughout this series. If you're a baseball fan, you know who he is. But if you're not, and you just stumbled upon this series and stuck around this long, first of all, thank you. And second of all, you're probably asking, who is Juan Soto and why did he get $765 million? Juan Soto came up with the Washington Nationals and made his big league debut at just 19 years old. He was an absolute phenom, and even won the World Series in just his second year in the majors. In his first 4 seasons, he put up a ridiculous 301, 432, 550 slash line, and came second in MVP voting in 2021, a season in which he led the league in walks and on-base percentage, and put up 7.3 BWAR. This presented a unique problem for the Nationals and the market of MLB free agents in general. Soto's arbitration years were set to end in the next 3 years, in 2024, making him a free agent. He would only be 26 years old. There has never, ever been a 26-year-old free agent this good at baseball, with this kind of history of success. Whoever would be able to lock him up would theoretically have him through the best years of his already magnificent career. That kind of potential had GMs frothing at the mouth and team owners cringing at what the price tag may end up being. In 2022, the Nationals offered Soto a 15-year, $440 million extension offer, which at the time would have been the largest MLB contract ever. Soto declined it. And so the Nationals, trending downward ever since their World Series run in 2019, opted to trade Soto at the deadline 3 years before his free agency to the San Diego Padres. They got an absolute haul of prospects in return. Soto struggled to end the year with the Padres, but in 2023, his lone full season with the team, he dominated once again, putting up 5.3 BWAR and a 930 OPS. Soto was acquired by the Padres under the ownership of Peter Seidler, who was aggressive with his spending. But unfortunately, Peter Seidler passed away in 2023. His older brother, John Seidler, took over ownership of the team, and is far more conservative in his spending. Gawking at the potential price tag of a Soto extension, he opted to trade Soto in the offseason to the New York Yankees. That's where Soto's been all year, just across town, where he put up 7.9 BWAR and set a career high in home runs with 41. He had multiple clutch moments all throughout the Yankees' playoff run, carrying them into the World Series. And that's where we are now. Going into the offseason, Juan Soto was the only player anyone even really cared about. It seemed like no one wanted to make a move until Soto went somewhere. It was generally expected that he would exceed the $440 million offer the Nationals gave him in 2022, but no one knew just how high that price tag would get. Soto's agent Scott Boras indicated to interested teams that there was no buy-it-now price. The contract would go as high as these billionaire owners bidded it on. The process was long and exhaustive, with meeting after meeting after meeting. And the sweepstakes ultimately came down to 5 teams. The Yankees and Mets, of course, but also the Red Sox, Dodgers, and Blue Jays all made formal offers to Boras. One by one, though, teams were eliminated, until it came down to just the Yankees and Mets. And the bidding escalated and escalated until the Mets put all the chips on the table and offered their gargantuan $765 million deal, with incentives to push it all the way to $805 million. The Yankees weren't terribly far behind, coming in at $760 million for 16 years, with a $60 million signing bonus. But it was ultimately the New York Mets who ripped away the biggest MLB free agent ever from the New York Yankees. So far in his tenure as Mets owner, this is Steve Cohen's defining legacy. The tides have shifted. The Mets have never stolen a free agent from the Yankees in this way before. This is new. This is a winning culture they're establishing here. For the next 15 years, the Mets have no excuse not to go for it every single season. That's what Soto represents. you have bought yourself 15 opportunities to build a World Series contender. No longer are the days of LOL Mets and Mets gonna Met. No longer. The Mets are a winning franchise. The Mets have a future. The Mets have a...